A follower from California shared an unsettling experience that happened in their childhood home. They were about 10 years old when the haunting began. One night, they woke up to a dark, shadowy figure standing at the foot of their bed. The figure was tall, with no distinct features, just a dark silhouette. At first, they thought it was a trick of the light, but as they stared at it, the figure slowly started to move toward them. Paralyzed with fear, they couldn't move or scream. The figure was almost right beside them when suddenly it vanished. The next morning, they found their younger sibling sleeping in the living room, visibly shaken. When asked why, the sibling said they felt watched and couldn't sleep. This wasn't the only time the shadow appeared. Over the next few weeks, it would appear in different rooms, always moving closer. Eventually, the family moved, and the sightings stopped. The follower believes the house was haunted by an entity that fed off their fear. A follower from London recounted a terrifying encounter that occurred while they were staying at their grandmother's house in the countryside. They were about 16 years old when they decided to spend the weekend there alone. On the first night, they woke up to faint whispers coming from the hallway. At first, they thought it was just the wind or an old house settling, but the whispers grew louder and clearer. The voice was soft, almost like a woman calling their name in a sing-song manner. They got out of bed and went to investigate, but the hallway was empty. After a few moments of silence, the whispers returned, closer this time, from behind them. When they turned around, they saw a pale, disheveled woman standing at the end of the hallway. Her face was obscured by long, matted hair, and her hand was outstretched toward them. The follower ran back to their room and locked the door, but the whispering continued through the night. The next morning, their grandmother said she had heard similar whispers years ago and believed it was the ghost of a woman who died in the house long ago. The follower never stayed in the house again. A follower from Berlin shared a chilling experience while camping with friends in a remote forest. They were hiking through the woods and set up camp in a secluded area far from the nearest town. Around midnight, they heard a faint scream coming from deep within the forest. At first, they thought it was an animal or another camper in distress, but as the screams continued, they realized something was wrong. The screams were human, and they were getting closer. The group was on edge, wondering if they should leave, but they decided to stay put. Suddenly, the screams stopped, and a heavy silence filled the air. Just as they thought it was over, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a man, disheveled and covered in dirt, who was screaming incoherently as he approached their camp. His eyes were wide with terror, and he seemed to be looking for something or someone. The group quickly packed up and ran back to the town, but when they told the locals, they learned that there had been reports of a screaming man in the area for years, and some believed he was a spirit of a man who had gone mad in the woods. A follower from Texas shared an experience that occurred while staying with their aunt in a large old mansion on the outskirts of a small town. The mansion, known as Hillcrest, had been in the family for generations, but no one had lived there for years. The aunt decided to restore the house and invited the follower to stay for a weekend. On the second night, the follower woke up to the sound of footsteps echoing down the long hallway. Thinking it was just the house settling, they went back to sleep. But the footsteps continued, growing louder and closer. Eventually, they couldn't ignore it anymore and got out of bed to investigate. As they walked into the hallway, they saw a faint light coming from the end of the corridor. When they approached, the light suddenly flickered out, and they felt a sudden chill. The follower turned to leave, but then heard a voice whispering their name from behind. They spun around, but the hallway was empty. The following morning, the aunt told them about strange occurrences in the house, including a previous tenant who had mysteriously disappeared many years ago. The follower believes the house is haunted by the spirit of the missing person, forever trapped in the mansion's dark corridors. A follower from Berlin recounted a chilling incident that happened while staying at a friend's apartment in an old building. The apartment had a large antique mirror in the hallway, which the follower found unsettling. One evening, they were alone in the apartment when they walked past the mirror and saw something strange in its reflection. At first, they thought it was their imagination, but when they looked again, they saw a shadowy figure standing behind them in the reflection. The follower quickly turned around, but there was no one there. Disturbed, they walked away, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Later that night, as they were about to fall asleep, they saw the same shadowy figure in the mirror again, this time much closer. The figure appeared to be moving toward them, its features still obscured. Terrified, they covered the mirror with a blanket and stayed awake until morning. The next day, they learned from their friend that the apartment had a history of being haunted. The previous tenant had been found dead in the living room, and many believed the spirit of the deceased haunted the mirror. Follower from Paris shared a terrifying experience that occurred during a hike through a dense forest near the city. They were hiking with a group of friends when they decided to take a detour off the main trail. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, and the trees became more densely packed, blocking out most of the light. After about an hour, they stopped to rest near a small clearing when they suddenly heard a woman's voice calling out from deeper in the forest. At first, they assumed it was another hiker, but the voice sounded strange, almost like it was pleading for help. Curiosity got the best of them, and they followed the voice. As they approached, the voice grew louder, and they began to see the outline of a woman standing between the trees. Her hair was wild, her clothes torn, and her eyes wide with an expression of intense fear. They tried to speak to her, but she didn't respond. Instead, she just stared at them, her gaze sending a chill down their spines. Before they could get any closer, the woman suddenly vanished into thin air, leaving only a lingering coldness behind. The group quickly returned to the main trail, shaken by the encounter. When they spoke to locals about the incident, they were told that many hikers had reported seeing a similar figure in the forest, believed to be the spirit of a woman who had gone missing there years ago.